Announcements.
Mr. Speaker, sir, it is with deep regret that we learned of the demise of former President Karl August Hoffmann, who was also a honorable member of this House. We were also saddened to hear of the loss of 3 former members of Parliament since this Assembly last met in December 2021. Mr. Jayeshwar Raj Dayal, on 19th December 2021, at the age of 72. Mr. Dinesh Mandil, on 15th January 2022, at the age of 69. And Mr. Ramnath Jita, on 28th of February 2022, at the age of 92. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is with profound sadness that I address the House to pay tribute to late Mr. Karl August Hoffmann, GCSK, former President of the Republic and former Member of Parliament, who passed away on 12 March 2022 at the age of 81. Mr. Karl Hoffmann, as he was commonly known, was born on 25th November 1940 in Portruis, in a poor family of 7 children. For his primary education, he attended the Girls' Government School and the Chandeleur Government School in Portruis. Since his family could not afford to pay for his secondary education, he chose to compete for a scholarship in order to pursue his studies further. He won the government-awarded Mechanical Engineering Apprenticeship Scholarship in 1956 and secured a seat at the prestigious Royal College School, then known as La School, and the Technical College of L'Oréal. To acquire practical knowledge and experience, he was trained at the then Government Railway Department, upon the completion of which, in 1963, he was awarded a certificate in mechanical engineering issued by the government of Mauritius. Mr. Hoffmann also held a diploma in social and political science from the Claver House in London. Mr. Hoffmann took up employment at the Daily L'Express newspaper as technician in the composition department. In 1979, he left La Sentinelle as plant and personnel manager and joined l'Imprimerie Père Laval as director until 1983. He thereafter took up employment at the Daily Le Socialiste as director, a position he held until 1986. Mr. Hoffmann always had a keen interest in social and voluntary work. At the age of 17, he joined the Jeunesse ouvrière chrétienne, and as such, he has been a coordinator of activities within the Indian Ocean Islands from 1966 to 1969. He left the Jeunesse ouvrière chrétienne in 1969. Thereafter, Mr. Hoffmann was entrusted the presidency of the Commission of Lay Apostolate by the then Bishop of Portruis. Mr. Speaker, sir, on the political front, Mr. Hoffmann started his career in 1976 and stood as candidate for several general elections. In December 1976 itself, he ran for the general election in constituency number 1, Grand River Northwest and Portruis West, under the banner of the Union démocratique mauricienne, but was not returned. In June 1982, he ran for the general election in constituency number 17, QPIP and Midlands under the banner of the MMM-PSM Alliance and was returned as third member. On 20th of March 1983, Mr. Hoffman was appointed as Minister of Economic Planning and Development. In August 1983, he ran for the general election in constituency number 16, Vacquois and Floréal, under the banner of the MSM Labour Party Alliance and was returned as first member. On 17th of April 1984, Mr. Hoffman was assigned the ministerial portfolio for local government and cooperatives. From January 1986 to August 1987, Mr. Hoffman held the ministerial portfolio for social security, national solidarity, and reform institutions. He was also assigned the portfolio of local government from 24th July to 8th August 1986. In August 1987, he ran for the general election in constituency number 16, Vacquois and Floréal, under the banner of the MSM Mauritius Labour Party Alliance, but was not returned. He was, however, allocated an additional seat under the best loser system. From November 1988 to August 1991, Mr. Hoffman was the chief government whip. In September 1991, he ran for the general election in constituency number 16, Vacquois and Floréal, under the banner of the MSM-MMM Alliance and was returned as third member. From October 1991 to July 1994, he held the ministerial portfolio for social security and national solidarity. From September 1994 to December 1995, he held the ministerial portfolio for labor and industrial relations. In 1995, he ran for the general election in constituency number 16, Vacquois and Floréal, under the banner of the MSM-RMM Alliance, but was not returned. Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. Hoffman was one of the founding members of the MSM party and has been the Secretary General thereof from 1987 to 1991. Thereafter, in 1996, Mr. Hoffman became President of the MSM party, a position he held until 2002, when he retired from active politics. Mr. Hoffman had been a guide and confidant for me and many other members of the MSM during all the time he served the party from 1983 to 2002. Mr. Speaker, sir, on 25th February 2002, Mr. Hoffman was elected President of the Republic of Mauritius, and he was elevated to the rank of Grand Commander of the Order of the Star and Key of the Indian Ocean on 8th of March 2002. He served the country in this high office until 1st October 2003. Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. Hoffman has been the recipient of many other titles and honors. On 25th August 2002, he was conferred the title of Honorary Freeman of the City of Port-Louis. On 13th September 2002, he was conferred the title of Honorary Freeman of the City of Maputo. On 21st May 2003, he was conferred the title of Honorary Freeman for the town of Tampon, Réunion Island, Republic of France. On 26th of June 2003, he attended the commemoration of the 43rd Independence Anniversary Day of Madagascar and was conferred the Grand Croix de Première Classe de l'Ordre National de Madagascar. In 2004, he became the Lloyd G. Balfour African President in Residence and continued to promote Mauritius and Africa at the international front. And in 2006, he became a founder member of the Forum for Former African Heads of State and Government, Africa Forum. Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. Hoffman was imbued with the qualities of a staunch patriot, a fighter, an honest and disciplined person and politician who demonstrated a high sense of responsibility in all the positions he served the country and his fellow citizens. From very humble beginnings, he rose to become head of state, and his destiny was such that his journey ended on the National Day. That is testimony of his greatness. With the demise of Karl Hoffmann, the country has lost a loyal and trustworthy servant, a man who loved his motherland and who contributed in his own way to craft a better future for our country. His achievements and memories will be cherished forever. He will remain a source of inspiration for all those who persevere against all odds and believe in inclusive development and shared prosperity. Mr. Speaker, sir, may I request you to kindly direct the clerk to convey the deep condolences of the Assembly to the members of the bereaved family of late Karl August Hoffmann, particularly to his son, Gilles Bernard. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I fully associate myself with the tribute made by the Honourable Prime Minister to late Mr. Karl Hoffmann, GCSK, former President of the Republic and former Member of Parliament. And on behalf of the opposition, may I request the clerk to convey our condolences to the bereaved family.
Honourable members, I associate myself with the tribute paid to the memory of late Mr. Karl August Hoffmann, GCSK, former President of the Republic and former Member of Parliament, by the Honourable Prime Minister and the Honourable Leader of Opposition, and I direct the clerk to convey the deep condolences of the Assembly to the bereaved family.
Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. Jayeshwar Raj Dayal, CSK, PDSM, QPM, was born on 7th of January 1949 in Kaulalian. After his studies, he joined the then Mauritius Police Department as police constable in 1971. In 1972, he became cadet inspector and was one of the first Mauritians to be commissioned as a military officer in the United Kingdom at the Royal Military Academy in Sandhurst. In 1976, he was trained as helicopter pilot in France. In 1977, he took command of the helicopter department as pilot in command in Mauritius. In 1985, Mr. Dayal completed his postgraduate military studies at the Defense Services Staff College of Camberley in the United Kingdom. On 10th July 1986, he assumed office as commanding officer of the Special Mobile Force. In 1991, he was conferred the Queen Police Medal, the highest police distinction in the Commonwealth. Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. Dayal attended high-level trainings in various institutions, such as FBI Washington and New Orleans, KGB Moscow, Scotland Yard UK, Interpol, and military and police institutions in India, Italy, Switzerland, France, United Kingdom, and Singapore. On 31st of August 1994, Mr. Dayal was appointed Commissioner of Police. On 12th of March 1995, he was elevated to the rank of Commander of the Order of the Star and Key of the Indian Ocean for outstanding contribution to the Mauritius Police Force. Mr. Speaker, sir, after leaving the Mauritius Police Force in 2000, Mr. Dayal started his political career and founded the Mouvement Démocratique National Raj Dayal. In September 2000, he ran for the general election in constituency number 10, Montagne Blanche and Grand River Southeast, under the banner of his party, but was not returned. In December 2003, he ran for the by-election in constituency number 7, Piton and Rivière-du-Rempart, under the banner of his party, but was not returned. In July 2005 and May 2010, he ran for the general elections in constituency number 10, Montagne Blanche and Grand River Southeast, under the banner of his party, but was not returned. In December 2014, he ran for the general election in constituency number 9, Flac and Bon-Accueil, under the banner of l'Alliance Les Peuples, and was elected as first member. On 15th of December 2014, he was appointed Minister of Environment, Sustainable Development, and Disaster and Beach Management, a post which he held until 23rd of March 2016. Mr. Speaker, sir, may I request you to kindly direct the Clerk of the National Assembly to convey the deep condolences of the Assembly to the members of the bereaved family of Jaishwar Raj Dayal. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I again fully associate myself with the tribute made by the Honourable Prime Minister to late Mr. Raj Dayal, former Member of Parliament, former Commissioner of Police, and also, therefore, on behalf of the whole opposition, request the Clerk to convey our condolences to the bereaved family.
Honourable members, I associate myself with the tribute paid to the memory of late Jaishwar Raj Dayal, CSK, PQSM, QPM, former Member of Parliament, by the Honourable Prime Minister and Honourable Leader of Opposition, and I direct the Clerk to convey the deep condolences of the Assembly to the bereaved family.
Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. Dinesh Mandil was born on 29th October 1952 in Port Louis. In 1969, Mr. Mandil joined the office of his father, Mr. Hari Mandil, a notary public, as a notary's clerk. In 1977, he contested the municipal council elections as an MMM candidate and was elected municipal councillor for Port Louis. Mr. Mandil successfully contested the municipal council elections for Port Louis in 1982, 1985, 1988, and 1991. From 23rd December 1986 to 30th October 1988, he served the capital as Deputy Lord Mayor and became Lord Mayor on 28th November 1989, a position which he held until 22nd November 1990. In August 1983, Mr. Mandil ran for the general elections in constituency number 4, Port Louis North and Montagne Long, under the banner of the MMM, and was elected as third member. In August 1987, he stood as candidate in the general election in constituency number 4, Port Louis North and Montagne Long, under the banner of l'Union MMM MTD FTS, but was not returned. From 1991 to 1995, Mr. Mandil held the post of Vice Chairperson of the National Remuneration Board. In 2000, he was appointed advisor to the Minister of Environment, a position he held till 2005. Mr. Mandil is also remembered for his contribution in the social and cultural fields. Mr. Speaker, sir, may I request you to kindly direct the clerk of the National Assembly to convey the deep condolences of the Assembly to the members of the bereaved family of late Dinesh Mandil.
I associate myself with the tribute made by the Honourable Prime Minister to late Mr. Dinesh Mandil, former Member of Parliament, and on behalf of the opposition, I again request the clerk to convey our condolences to the bereaved family.
Honourable members, I associate myself with the tribute paid to the memory of late Mr. Dinesh Mandil, former Member of Parliament, by the Honourable Prime Minister and the Honourable Leader of Opposition, and I direct the clerk to convey the deep condolences of the Assembly to the bereaved family.
Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. Ramnath Jita, G-O-S-K, was born on 13th June 1930 in Rishmar. In 1951, he started his teaching career at the Bujwari College. Having personally experienced difficulties to access education, since most secondary schools were located in towns in those days, Mr. Jita was determined to provide educational opportunities to the youths of the FLAC region. In 1956, he founded the Eastern College, later renamed as the Professor Basdeo Bisundayal College in Central FLAC. Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. Jita had a keen interest in social work and politics. In 1958, he joined the Independent Forward Bloc, and in 1963, ran for the general elections in constituency number 19, Grand River South East, but was not elected. From 1964 to 1967, he served the Village Council of Central FLAC as president. He has also played a significant role in the agricultural sector. In the 1960s, Mr. Jita campaigned for the rights of the small planters, which led to the creation of the Mauritius Small Planters Association. In 1963, he became president of the association, a post he held till 1976. Mr. Jita was fully engaged in socio-cultural activities. He has also been an active member of the Mauritius Sanatan Dharma Temples Federation. In August 1967, Mr. Jita ran for the 1967 general elections in constituency number 9, FLAC and Bon Accueil, under the banner of the Independence Party, and was elected as first member. Mr. Jita held the ministerial portfolio for information and broadcasting from 1967 to 1969. Thereafter, following a split in the government coalition, he joined the ranks of the opposition. From April 1975 to October 1976, Mr. Jita served as chairperson of the Public Accounts Committee. In December 1976, he ran for the 1976 general elections in constituency number 9, FLAC and Bon Accueil, under the banner of the Independent Forward Bloc, but was not elected. Mr. Jita continued to manage the Eastern College and devoted himself to educational activities. In 1980, he joined a distance learning program from Punjab University and was later awarded a Bachelor of Arts degree. From 1982 to 1986, he served as president of the Administrative Council of the DAV College in Port Louis, while also being in charge of the Eastern College. On 12th of March 2011, Mr. Jita was elevated to the rank of Grand Officer of the Order of the Star and Key of the Indian Ocean for his long and distinguished service in the fields of education and politics. Mr. Speaker, sir, may I request you to kindly direct the Clerk of the National Assembly to convey the deep condolences of the Assembly to the members of the bereaved family of late Ramnath Jita.
Mr. Speaker, I fully associate myself with the tribute made by the Honourable Prime Minister to late Mr. Ramnath Jita, former Member of Parliament. And again, on behalf of the opposition, may I request the Clerk to convey our condolences to the bereaved family.
Honourable members, I associate myself with the tribute paid to the memory of late Mr. Ramnath Jita GOSK, former Member of Parliament by the Honourable Prime Minister and the Honourable Leader of Opposition, and I direct the Clerk to convey the deep condolences of the Assembly to the bereaved family. I have an announcement. Honourable members, you will recall that on 8 December 2020 and 18 May 2021, respectively, I informed the House that my attention had been drawn to the fact that some honourable members had expressed concerns in regard to the manner in which notices of parliamentary questions are being received by the Clerk of the National Assembly and the way same are being treated prior to finding the order in which they appear on the notice of questions. I also drew the attention of the House to the fact that the procedure of giving notice of parliamentary questions is hence governed by Standing Order 24, and that the internal arrangement at the Clerk's office is purely an administrative matter. In effect, the order in which parliamentary questions have been appearing on the notice of questions were determined by the order in which same were being received, in other words, on a first-come, first-served basis. In the light of the aforementioned, I invited the whips of both sides of the House to thrash out the issues with all the stakeholders and submit concrete suggestions to review the process. I have to inform the House that I received a written agreement dated 18th March 2022, co-signed by the Honourable Chief Government Whip and the Honourable Whip of the Opposition, to the effect that parliamentary questions of which notice are given for a particular Tuesday sitting be the subject of a drawing of lot for the purpose of determining the order in which same would appear on the notice of questions, and that same would be conducted in the office of the Clerk of the National Assembly in the presence of the Honourable Government Chief Whip or any government representative, MP, and the Honourable Whip of the Opposition or any Honourable Opposition representative MP. Copy of the said agreement is hereby being tabled. I agreed to the implementation of the said agreement pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 77, which reads as follows. The Speaker shall have power to regulate the conduct of business in the Assembly in all matters not provided for in these orders. And the notice of questions for today's sitting contained parliamentary questions set in the order determined by the drawing of lot conducted on Wednesday last. Moreover, should honourable members have further queries on the matter, they are kindly invited to see me privately in my office. I thank you for your attention.
Papers have been laid. Questions?
Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, sir, my question is addressed to the Honourable Attorney General, Minister of Agro-Industry and Food Security. Whether, in regard to the project for the refurbishment and upgrading of the Splash and Fun leisure park at a cost of over 380 million rupees. As at to date, he will, A, for the benefit of the House, obtain from the Sugar Investment Trust information from Sugar Investment Trust Leisure information as to 1, the expected completion date thereof, indicating the quantum of the funds required for completion. 2, if any market research was effected prior to the start of the project, and if so, by whom. And B, state if he will obtain and table a copy of the report of the internal auditor following the Board of Directors meeting of 2nd June 2021. And C, state whether any matter has been referred to the police for inquiry.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir. The Sugar Investment Trust is established under Section 3 of the Sugar Industry Efficiency Act. The trust is a body corporate, and for the purposes of the Companies Act, the SIT is considered as a company. The objects of the trust are set out in Section 4 of the Sugar Industry Efficiency Act. It may, therefore, invest inter alia in, I quote, leisure, entertainment, and gaming. As such, the board of the SIT in October 1999 set up a subsidiary as a private company, namely SIT Leisure Limited, for the purpose of investment in the then Belmore Water Park, constructed in the year 2000 and which opened on 4th December 2000. The Belmore Water Park was rebranded as the Splash and Fun Leisure Park in 2019. Mr. Speaker, sir, with regard to the refurbishment started in 2018 for an estimated cost of 350 million rupees. Refurbishment was completed in 2019, except for one item, namely the Boomerang, which has been completed up to 68% only, as the park was closed due to COVID-19 pandemic from 19 March 2020 to 15 October 2020, and from 15 March 2021 to 29 October 2021, and again from 12 November 2021 to 29th January 2022. I am informed that the board is contemplating to complete the Boomerang item of the refurbishment subject to availability of funds. With regard to the market research, Mr. Speaker, sir, I am informed that a business review was undertaken by firm PwC in 2016 for the SIT and its subsidiaries. I am further informed that for the water park project specifically, a business review was carried out by firm KPMG. With regard, Mr. Speaker, sir, to the internal auditor report, I am informed that following a board meeting of the SIT Leisure Limited held on 2nd of June 2021, the board members requested the internal auditor to prepare a comprehensive report on the 350 million rupees spent on the refurbishment of the park and the construction of the Boomerang. I am informed that the report of the internal auditor was submitted to the board of SIT Leisure Limited on 23rd of March 2022. This report is still being examined by the board. I am further informed, Mr. Speaker, sir, that there is not only one internal auditor's report, but other connected internal auditor report on the refurbishment. All these reports are also being examined by the board. I wish to reiterate, Mr. Speaker, sir, that SIT Leisure Limited is a private company, as I have explained earlier. Mr. Speaker, sir, with regard to the question of whether to table the internal auditor report, I beg your pardon, Mr. Speaker, sir, with regard to the police inquiry, I am informed by the Commissioner of Police that as at date, no case has been reported to the police for inquiry in connection with the refurbishment and upgrading of the leisure park. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, with regard to whether the report of the internal auditor should be tabled in the House, I wish to inform the House that the report has not yet been officially submitted to my ministry. I am also informed that the Independent Commission Against Corruption is investigating in this case, and therefore, by virtue of Section 81 of the Prevention of Corruption Act, the said investigation and all information surrounding it is confidential.
May I ask the Honourable Minister, I thank him for his concise reply. May I ask the Honourable Minister concerning the famous Boomerango, which has been completed about two-thirds for a total cost of 76 million rupees, I'm sure he well knows. Needs maybe 35, 50 million rupees more to complete. It is currently an eyesore. I can submit photos. Is the Minister honestly telling the House that he is not sure whether the 76 million rupees a project cost 70 million to date is going to be completed, or otherwise the money is just going to be thrown down the drain? Because he said that it is subject to available funds.
The situation, Mr. Speaker, sir, the SIT Leisure Limited, as I said, is a private company which is governed by its board of directors. I do not have ministerial responsibility on the way the company is being managed by the board of directors. However, in the spirit of transparency, what I can share with the House is that, as far as I am informed, the business plan was that revenue would have been generated from the operation of the park. That revenue would have funded the remaining part of the refurbishment project. As I said, the park had to be closed not on one, but on 3 occasions. Let me give the dates again. 19 March 2020, after the detection of the first COVID cases. And then the park was reopened in October 2020. However, it was again closed in March 2021, following the second lockdown, and it was reopened on 30th October 2021. And then came November 2021 with Omicron, it was closed again. The park has reopened. The figures, as far as I am informed, show that when the park is in operation, it generates sufficient revenue. Now, when will the park operate fully, 100%? I cannot say, because the situation is very volatile.
Speaker, sir, the park, the Boomerang, was meant to be completed in December 2019, 3 months before the first lockdown. The amount spent was 76 million rupees and has been stopped because of financial constraints. Is it seriously telling us that the future of a project having cost 76 million rupees is solely reliant on this SIT being able to generate some funds from what has been historically loss-making concern, the water park? Otherwise, the money will just go down the drain?
If the Honourable Leader of Opposition, Mr. Speaker, is suggesting that there has been some mismanagement, then the Board of Directors will have to take its responsibility. As I have mentioned, the Board has already asked, it is the Board which asked for the internal auditor report. They are still examining, not one, but I'm informed there are other internal auditor reports as well. So I will say, let the Board of Directors shoulder their responsibility, and if there has been, in case there has been mismanagement, the board will know what to do.
I'd like to remind the Minister that there is a PS of his ministry and also a PAS of his ministry who has historically sat on this board, on these boards, and therefore his ministry should have all the historical information necessary for him to be apprised of what is happening, and I'm surprised that his ministry says they don't know what is happening. Now, Mr. Speaker, I visited the park. The park as it stands, Mr. Speaker, the Boomerango is unfinished. The bumper car is out of order, needs 20 million rupees. The 7D cinema needs another 14 or 15 million rupees to be put in order. There's a VR games not working. The carousel is not working. The pirate boat, although recently installed, is totally rusted. 400 million rupees, Mr. Speaker, nearly has been spent. You can't see anything for that money that has been spent. I'm just asking the Minister whether the money has not been embezzled, right, left, and center, and this is why I'm asking for a police inquiry, because there's nothing to show for nearly 400 million rupees of funds spent.
Yeah, I know the Honourable Leader of Opposition visited the park on Friday. I thought it was on Friday, but never mind. I had the occasion of visiting the park in October 2020, but not recently. Should, as I said, what the Leader of Opposition is asking is for a police inquiry, but as I have informed the House, there is an ongoing investigation by the ICAC. I don't want to say more. What I can also say is that this is probably precisely why the board has asked the internal auditor to produce a report on the refurbishment. So let the board examine that internal auditor report, and let also the ICAC pursue its investigation.
There's at least 100 million rupees more required, and I'm going to ask the Honourable Minister whether he's going to put that money into the water park without this time having a proper market research. Because as everybody knows, a business review is not a market research. And the water park has historically been losing money. Someone decides to put 400 million rupees or more in a project and does not do a market research to see whether there is any chance of it making money.
We are not, let it be clear, we are not talking of public funds here. The SIT Leisure Limited is a private company. The water park refurbishment project has, if I'm not mistaken, 80%, 79 or 80% of debt financing from bank and proprietary funds for 19 or 20%. We're not talking of public funds. Let there be no confusion about that. Furthermore, government is not injecting any public funds in the refurbishment project.
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Minister has historically been the PS of the Ministry of Agriculture and the DPS on that board, because there happens to be 55,000 petits planteurs who are shareholders in that company following an Act of Parliament passed in this House. If the Minister is going to wash his hands entirely of the issue, then why have the PS and the DPS of his ministry historically sat on this board? And I can give their names if you want.
Yes, you're correct to say that the petits planteurs are represented on the board of directors. This is clearly spelled out in the Sugar Industry Efficiency Act in Section 5, which lists down the composition of the board of directors. And in fact, when you look at Section 5 of the Sugar Industry Efficiency Act, the board of the SIT consists of 9 directors, Mr. Speaker, sir, out of whom only 3 are appointed by the minister. The majority of directors, that is 6, are appointed by the Assembly of Delegates, that is, those who are elected by the petits planteurs and who are delegated, and they are from various sectors. This assembly of delegates is composed of delegates from the 4 factory areas. 6 representatives from each of the 4 makes 24 assembly of delegates. It is wrong to believe that government has a majority on the board of the SIT. It has never been the case. The majority of 6 over 9 directors composed of the representative of the delegates who are elected. That should be very clear in the minds of one and all.
Mr. Speaker, it is also clear that de facto, with the PS and the DPS of the ministry on that board, it is the ministry and the ministers from then on, from the past, who have controlled that board. I'm going to ask the Honourable Minister. I'm surprised that he says that he has not read a copy of the internal audit report. Will he inform himself, in fact, Mr. Speaker, will he check and see whether this internal audit report doesn't say that suppliers to SIT have been paid millions of rupees, in fact 22.7 million rupees, without any tender? Will he be surprised to say that amounts, large amounts, millions, have been paid to local contractors without board approval? In fact, Mr. Speaker, 3.5 million rupees were spent on accommodation, food and drinks and entertainment, 3.5 million rupees for foreign visitors. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, will you also check whether, in fact, the internal auditor doesn't say that 2.7 million rupees was paid to a contracting, although should have been paid to a contracting company, but was paid to a different individual, coming, Mr. Speaker, to a conclusion that, in fact, the SIT could have been accessory to a crime. All this is in the internal audit report, and he's saying he hasn't been given a copy of that report.
You're making statements too long time. Put your question. What do you want from the minister?
I asked.
Okay. Minister?
Let me come on 2 points. First of all, on the control of the board. I reiterate what I've said earlier. Honourable Leader of Opposition keeps saying that the PS of the ministry used to sit on the board. Even if the PS used to sit on that board, I say again, the minister appoints only 3 persons over a total of 9 directors on the board of the SIT. That does not give the minister or the ministry a control over a board of 9 directors. That should be clear. Coming to the internal auditor report, let me say it again. It is the board members who ask for the internal auditor report. They must therefore have seen that there is a need for such an internal auditor report, in the light of which the Honourable Leader of Opposition mentions a number of specific matters. I will not go into the specific matters, because these report, together with the other internal audit report, are being examined by the board. Responsibility will rest with directors. I have also disclosed that I am informed there is an ongoing ICAC investigation. I will leave it at that. I will say no more, for reasons of confidentiality in Section 81 of the PUCA.
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Minister knows full well that it is only the new board appointed by himself when he took office, following the then Minister, Mr. Siratan. When he took office, it is then that the new board, seeing what has happened and the obvious embezzlement that has happened, asked the internal auditor to do the work. It is the new board, Mr. Speaker, not the old board. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to again ask the Honourable Minister to take cognizance of this internal audit report if he says he hasn't done so, because he has the responsibility of 55,000 long-suffering petits planteurs, artisans, pensioners. He has those people on his shoulder. We respect his decision to ask the internal auditor, because it is his decision to ask the internal auditor to do the work. But he has to go further and look at the report and tell us what is going to be done following this report.
Mr. Speaker, so I think I can only reiterate what I have said earlier. The work is being done. The report is here. I said I did not say I haven't taken cognizance of it. The report has not been sent officially to my ministry because it is still being examined by the board. I can say that I have asked for it following the PNQ. I have also asked for other information surrounding this whole matter. This is how I come to know that there is other internal audit report and the work is ongoing. It is premature to say what the investigation will reveal. I will say again, for reasons of confidentiality, I will say no more.
This project was done against all the established procedures in government, without tender, without architect, without supervising engineer, with nothing, all done au petit bonheur. Would he explain, Mr. Speaker, how come the then chairman of this company, SIT, Sugar Investment Trust and SIT Leisure, one Mr. Pritam Budan, has supervised all this bloody mess. And he has been promoted, Mr. Speaker, to now becoming chairman of Landscope Limited, which has 3 times more assets to deplete than Sugar Investment Trust. How can this gentleman now, as we speak, be sitting as chairman of Landscope?
Speaker, sir, I take objection to the fact that Honorable Leader of Opposition now starts to mention somebody's name here who is not in the House, who has been... It is established parliamentary practice that we do not reveal the names of persons, and for especially those who are not here to defend themselves. This is a cardinal rule of parliamentary practice. We should stick to this established practice. As I said again, if there has been mismanagement, the board will take its responsibility. And it is, once again, we should not create the confusion in the mind of people that SIT is a department of government. SIT is not a department of government or a ministry for that matter. When the Honorable Leader of Opposition says the established procedures of government have not been followed, SIT is not a department of government. You should not create this confusion in the minds of people.
The minister has to take, government has to take responsibility. They had a permanent secretary. I'm not giving the name of the poor lady. They have also another permanent secretary who replaced her, and a DPS sitting for all this time on these boards. And here we come, appointed by the minister then, the then minister himself. And here we come, and government washes its hands completely of this fiasco, which is going to cost 480 million rupees to the small planters of Mauritius. Now, I'm going to ask one thing to the Honourable Minister. The SIT Leisure, now it owes 600 million rupees. 600 million rupees of petit planteur money, artisan money, pensioners' money.
Your question...
It owes that... Well, ask...
No, you're making a long statement.
Well, I'm going to ask a question in a moment.
Directly.
I'm going to ask as directly as I can. Now, Mr. Speaker, I want to ask the Honourable Minister, what does he propose to do? Is government going to refund this 600 million rupees that has been thrown down the drain by SIT? And it is all money belonging to poor people of this country.
It is premature to say that money has been thrown down the drain, Mr. Speaker, sir. If there is anything to be done, the board has to take its responsibility. And furthermore, talking of the 55,000 petit plantaires and other shareholders, I will invite them through the Assembly of Delegates, which is created under Section 6 of the SIE Act, to also take its responsibility. The Assembly of Delegates appoint, as I say, 6 directors out of 9 on the board of the SIT. They have their say in the management of the company. They will also have to inquire, to ask questions in the appropriate forum.
All through its history, the SIT, Sugar Industry Trust, created by government in this House, has had problems. It used to have a huge turnover. At one point, 1.2, 1.3 billion rupees. Now the latest turnover, 200 million rupees. It has dwindled, Mr. Speaker, like a peau de chagrin. So what I'm going to ask the Honourable Minister now is a matter of policy. Whether it isn't time for us to review the way that SIC is managed, the way that the directors are appointed, so that for this huge amount of money that is still there, there is now a decent management and a decent board of directors who, however they may be appointed, professionally to manage money belonging to all these 55,000 people.
Yes, as a matter of policy, Mr. Speaker, sir, I can say, yes, I have had consultations for some time now in my ministry. Collectively, we believe a time has come to review the structure of SIT. Now, which form that will take, we are still having internal discussion. But there is indeed room for improvement after so many years, and especially after seeing facts and figures based on historical performance. So I am personally in favor of a review of the corporate structure. How will that happen? Whether it's coming in a specific legislation or in the forthcoming finance bill, we are still having internal discussions.
Last question, and then maybe my colleagues. I'm going to ask the Minister. The previous Minister who was supervised all this was promoted from Minister of Agriculture to Minister of Financial Services and Good Governance, s'il vous plaît. The previous chairman, Pritam Budan, has been promoted to a much bigger company, Landscope Limited. Now, I've also received many representations from parlementaire, principally, artisans, etc., calling this huge scandal Splashgate, and saying, Mr. Speaker, that they request, through me, through the opposition, a full commission of inquiry, not only on SIT Leisure Limited, c'est un petit marchand in this huge scandal, but on the whole forthcoming demise, I would say, of SIT itself, which, as I mentioned, has lost a huge amount of its profitability and is now paying a few cents only of dividends per share, a tenth of what it was paying before. Can we have a full-fledged commission of inquiry on Sugar Investment Trust?
I don't believe a commission of inquiry is called for, Mr. Speaker, sir. What can happen is the new delegates who have been recently elected, very recently, towards the end of last year. So there is a whole new assembly of delegates who have been elected. Elections are held in all the factory areas every 3 years. So that new body of assembly of delegates can ask whatever questions they wish to in their assembly of delegates and through their elected directors on the board. As insofar as the internal audit is concerned, there is, and the facts disclosed therein, there is, as I said, an inquiry ongoing at ICAC. La question de la commission d'enquête ne se pose pas, Monsieur le Président.
Prime Minister's question time. You have a question?
Following the replies given by the Honourable Minister, it stands to reason that there is collusion and incestuous relationship between the SIT Board of Directors and the Ministry. Am I to understand that one of the members appointed by the Minister, sitting as a director on the Board of SIT, is under investigation by ICAC? And would he tell the House the reason as to why he has not been asked to step down?
No, I take exception on the word collusion, Mr. Speaker, sir. I might not have heard the exact words used by an honourable member, but collusion certainly is not there between anybody and the ministry. I think the honourable member hasn't heard me earlier when I explained what is the structure of the SIT and how that board functions. If that is the case, then I'm indeed very pleased that you know the board structure. So there cannot be, therefore, in any way, any collusion whatsoever. Now, who is being investigated by ICAC? Which specific aspect? the honorable member knows very well, these are confidential, covered by Section 81 of the POCA, and I cannot therefore reveal. Not a question of whether I can reveal or not. I don't even have the confidential information from ICAC.
Time over. Prime Minister's question time. Honourable members, the table has been advised that I appreciate the good mood on the first day. Honourable members, the table has been advised that PQ B18 will be replied by the Honourable Minister of Finance, Economic Planning and Development. PQ B62, B77, B99, B101 have been withdrawn. Honourable Richard Duval, you have the floor.
Yes, B1.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the House will be aware that on 25th of February 2019, pursuant to a request from the United Nations General Assembly, the International Court of Justice gave an advisory opinion on the legal consequences of the separation of the Chagos Archipelago from Mauritius in 1965, in which it made clear that the Chagos Archipelago is and has always been an integral part of the territory of Mauritius. The United Nations General Assembly adopted on 22nd of May 2019 Resolution 73/295, which affirmed, in accordance with the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice, that the Chagos Archipelago forms an integral part of the territory of Mauritius. Following the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice, Mauritius invited Maldives to engage in negotiations for the delimitation of the maritime boundary between the two states in the region of the Chagos Archipelago. Since Maldives did not accept that invitation, Mauritius initiated on 18th of June 2019 arbitral proceedings against Maldives under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. By special agreement dated 24th of September 2019, Mauritius and Maldives agreed to transfer the case to a special chamber of the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea. On 18th December 2019, Maldives raised preliminary objections to the jurisdiction of the special chamber of the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea. Following the exchange of written pleadings between the parties and the holding of an oral hearing in October 2020, the special chamber gave on 28th January 2021 its judgment, in which it rejected all the preliminary objections raised by Maldives and found that it has jurisdiction to adjudicate on the dispute submitted to it by the parties. The special chamber also ruled that Mauritius has undisputed sovereignty over the Chagos Archipelago. The case is still at pleading stage. Mauritius filed its memorial on 25th of May 2021, while Maldives submitted its counter-memorial on 25th of November 2021. Pursuant to an order dated 15th of December 2021 from the President of the Special Chamber of the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, Mauritius has to submit its reply by 14th of April 2022, and Maldives its rejoinder by 15th of August 2022. In the context of the preparation of its reply, Mauritius considered it necessary to undertake a scientific survey of Blenheim Reef, which took place from 8th to 22nd of February 2022. The purpose of the survey was to collect crucial data which can assist the Special Chamber of the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea in the maritime delimitation exercise. In that regard, Mauritius chartered the Bleu de Nîmes, which met our requirements. The Mauritius delegation seized the opportunity to also visit Peros Banos and Solomon Islands. Mr. Speaker, sir, in reply to part A of the question, I wish to inform the House that it was initially planned that the participants in the scientific survey would depart for the Chagos Archipelago from the port of Gan in Maldives and return to Gan from the Chagos Archipelago. The expedition would have lasted about 1 week in that case. As a matter of fact, Mauritius wrote to Maldives to seek its assistance for the use of its port in Gan. However, the conditions imposed by Maldives for the use of its port were unacceptable to Mauritius. Consideration was accordingly given to the departure of the participants from Rodrigues. However, the captain of the Bleu de Nîmes advised that the journey would be very tough if the vessel were to set off from Rodrigues because of cyclonic weather conditions. It was therefore decided that the participants would leave for the Chagos Archipelago from Seychelles and would return to the Seychelles. In the circumstances, the survey mission lasted 15 days instead of about 1 week. Mr. Speaker, sir, with regard to part B of the question, the cost of the survey mission includes the cost of chartering the vessel Bleu de Nîmes for undertaking the trip to the Chagos Archipelago, which amounts to 956,648.33 euros, or approximately 48 million rupees. The cost of a special charter flight from Mauritius to Seychelles to fly the participants based in Mauritius to Seychelles, amounting to 28,825 US dollars, or approximately 1.3 million rupees. The cost of air tickets for the return of 14 participants from Seychelles to Mauritius and amounting to 365,655 rupees. Insurance cover for travel by sea and travel by air, which amounts to 46,552 rupees and 25 cents. The cost of hiring the services of 2 foreign surveyors. The total fees payable to the surveyors amount to 160,000 US dollars, or approximately 7.2 million rupees, and exclude the cost of the air tickets they have purchased to travel to and from Seychelles. There are other costs relating to the survey mission which have yet to be settled, and the claims are awaited. The journalists from the British Broadcasting Corporation, The Guardian, and the Atlantic Magazine, who have formed part of the delegation, have offered to make a contribution to the cost of the survey mission. To date, contributions have been received from the British Broadcasting Corporation and The Guardian. Mr. Speaker, sir, as regards part C of the question, the company owning the vessel Bleu de Nîmes is Chemba Limited, which is registered in Gibraltar. As for the vessel, it is registered in Cook Islands. With regard to Part D of the question, I wish to inform the House that in view of the national security and vessel safety implications of such a mission in the Chagos Archipelago, let alone the fact that bidders were not readily available for this type of mission, the Bleu de Nîmes was hired outside the parameters of the Public Procurement Act in conformity with Section 3(1)(a) of the Act, and accordingly, no tenders were launched.
Yes, thank you very much, Prime Minister. Can the Honourable Prime Minister tell the House, in a press conference, stated that some companies have imposed conditions which were unacceptable by his government? Could he specify which conditions were considered unacceptable?
Well, may I know from the Honourable Member which press conference did I hold when I was allegedly having said those words that the Honourable
On the
Member
27th of February?
Well, I've never said that the companies have imposed conditions which were unacceptable to the government of Mauritius. Well, if you can table a report for me having said that.
Okay, well, Maldives.
I have never said
Yes,
such thing.
you said Maldives.
Any supplementary?
The company.
Honorable Richard Duval?
Well, if you rephrase the question, of course I will answer.
Since you were well aware in advance of the schedule of the date of the mission, then was it not of a paramount importance for you to be part of this mission, and most importantly, mark your presence as Prime Minister of Mauritius on the Chagos Archipelagos to hoist the Mauritian flag as an historical moment for our country?
Well, this I said in a press conference that I had always wanted to form part of a trip that would go to the Chagos Archipelago. This occasion had arisen in the light of the case that we had entered against Maldives. We, as I said, we had to carry out this survey, and we tried our best. I can tell you that I also spoke to the president of the Maldives at one of the previous conferences that we attended to seek his cooperation. But it is unfortunate that when we wrote to the Maldives to request that we could depart from one of their ports, because that would be the quickest, the cheapest way of going to the Chagos. And I was, of course, very keen to form part of that expedition, because it would have taken only about 7 days at the most. But unfortunately, I must say, Maldives have been very uncooperative. And maybe if you are referring to what conditions they have imposed, they were willing to allow only people who are directly connected with the scientific and technical survey that would be conducted. Now, this is unacceptable. Can you imagine, Mr. Speaker, sir, excluding, first of all, our lawyers? They are the very person who are going to appear for us before a tribunal, who are going to plead and submit in our case. And they were being excluded initially. So, anyway, so unfortunately, when we decided, we explore, in fact, the possibility of leaving from our territory itself, that is Rodrigues. But at that time, unfortunately, the weather conditions were such. In fact, we had 2 cyclones one after the other, and the weather conditions did not permit because we stood guided by the advice of the captain of the ship, and it would have taken, anyway, even from Rodrigues, it would have taken 15 days to go there. So I would say the other option was to leave from Seychelles, and I must say that I spoke personally to His Excellency President Wawel Ramkelawan, and he immediately told me that he would do everything that he could to facilitate our expedition from the Seychelles. Well, again, it took about 15 days to go there, and it would have been very difficult for me to leave the country and to be away for 15 days. So I hope maybe next time when we organize such another trip to the Chagos, I hope it will take, first of all, it will take less time, and we'll be able, then I will be able to form part of that trip.
Monsieur le Premier ministre, vous parlez de la tentative des Maldives d'exclure les avocats mauriciens. Est-ce que le Premier ministre peut éclairer la Chambre? Comment est-ce que la presse mauricienne, la presse indépendante mauricienne dans son ensemble, n'ont pas été invités à participer dans cette délégation, alors que d'autres presses étrangères, quels sont les critères qui ont été établis par votre gouvernement pour que la presse mauricienne soit exclue de cette délégation?
J'ai déjà répondu à cette question en dehors de la Chambre. C'est un plaisir pour moi de répondre dans la Chambre maintenant. J'ai dit que le nombre de places qui étaient disponibles sur le bateau, si je ne me trompe pas, c'était, je crois, environ 28 personnes. Et on n'avait que quelques places seulement pour les journalistes. Et on a privilégié... Ouais. What is it? You want to intervene? You want to...
You don't have the right.
What is
Please.
gesticulation?
You don't have the right. You don't have the floor. You don't have the floor.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I have listened without interruption to questions. I don't want to be interrupted when I am answering. Okay? So I was saying, Monsieur le Président, je disais qu'il n'y avait que quelques places seulement pour les journalistes. Et on a privilégié, je l'ai dit, on a privilégié les journalistes tels que la BBC, le Guardian, Atlantic, parce qu'on voulait avoir un international exposure. On voulait que le monde puisse savoir exactement qu'est-ce qui s'est passé concernant les Chagossiens et comment l'Angleterre a illégalement démembré l'archipel des Chagos de notre territoire avant de nous donner l'indépendance. Donc, je suis satisfait que cet objectif a été atteint. Et cet objectif, Monsieur le Président, je pense que cet objectif n'aurait pas été atteint aussi bien si on n'avait que la presse locale. Ceci dit, j'avais dit à la conférence de presse que j'espère que dans une prochaine occasion, quand on pourra organiser un autre voyage aux Chagos, évidemment, on va essayer de voir si on peut inviter les journalistes locaux.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I'd like to request the Prime Minister to give information with regard to the scientific survey mission which was carried out. Was the survey mission, did they notify the UK government? And were there some interruptions during the survey, as some members of the British Parliament termed this mission as a political stunt? Thank you.
Well, whether we did notify the UK, I must say, I must have the dates so that we can, I can communicate the There it is. So on the 1st of December 2021, my colleague, the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade, had addressed a note verbal to the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office to inform the United Kingdom, as a matter of courtesy, of the intention of Mauritius to carry out in February 2022 a scientific survey of the Blenheim Reef, Solomon Islands Atoll, and appurtenant waters. Of course, in the context of the maritime delimitation case which we had brought against the Maldives. Now, Mauritius also had sought the assurance of the United Kingdom that it would not impede the survey. In its reply of 17th of December 2021, the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office conveyed the consent, can you imagine, the consent of the United Kingdom to the survey and assured Mauritius that the British authorities would not impede the survey. Mr. Speaker, sir, on the 4th of January 2022, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade sent a note verbal to the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office to clarify that Mauritius did not seek the consent of the United Kingdom for the survey, as the Chagos Archipelago forms an integral part of the territory of Mauritius. And with regard to the other issue raised by Honourable Member, well, you know, as soon as the ship entered our EEZ, suddenly there was no internet, communication was getting very difficult, and on top of that, when we had entered the territorial waters of Mauritius, there were two British ships, which were monitoring the activities of Blenheim. In fact, we had also drawn the attention of the UK that it was improper, illegal for the ship to be in our territorial waters without our consent.
You have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Premier ministre a parlé d'objectifs atteints. One of the objectives is to, for the Chagosian community to return on the archipelago. Will the Honourable Prime Minister inform the House whether the next move of the government, especially with regard to the Chagosian community, whether there is a settlement plan, a plan of action, and for the community to settle there, and if there is one, what is the time frame within which this action plan, this resettlement plan, will be implemented?
Monsieur le Président, cette visite, je l'ai qualifiée comme historique. Unfortunately, there is one member of the opposition who criticized me to say it was not historique, it was hysterique. And let me say also, coming from the MMM, when I looked at what was stated in the press, not even privately in the press, from the leader of the MMM, to say that ce voyage, ce n'est que du bluff. This needs to be said for people to know how you have put a very good question. I'm very happy that you put that question. But then you should not be double-faced. Outside you say something, and then in the House you're saying something else. But anyway, I qualified this trip, this visit, as historique. Parce que pour la première fois depuis notre indépendance, nous avons pu, indépendamment, louer un bateau pour aller sans contrainte, sans être suivi, sans aucune directive Et sans surveillance, enfin, surveillance, il y a eu, mais on a pu aller librement sur notre territoire, les Chagos archipelago. Et je suis encore plus fier, Monsieur le Président, que même si moi, comme Premier ministre, je n'ai pas pu faire partie de ce voyage, les Chagossiens, ceux qui sont nés là-bas, ont pu aller sur l'île où leurs ancêtres ont été enterrés. And I don't want to say, you know, for me, this is very emotional. This is very emotional for me. Because the Chagossians, you know, they have found out dans quel état, hein, par exemple, l'église, le cimetière était dans un état délabré. But anyway, I have repeatedly in the past said that one of the objectives is for the Chagossians or anyone who is willing to go to the Chagos archipelago and to live there, we will have a plan of resettlement. At any rate, we have, in the past budget, we have already voted a sum of money. And then in future budgets also, we will make provision. But of course, we can't resettle unless we take possession of those islands. And unfortunately, the UK is still, I must say the UK is still remaining on the wrong side of history. But that is their choice. But we will fight, and we will fight until we regain possession of our territory.
I can see too many supplementary questions flowing. I will give Honorable Osman Mohamed 1, Honorable 2 1, and last supplementary would be Honorable Richard Duval.
Yes, thank you. In the same vein of objectif atteint de la mission, for Blenheim Reef to be considered as baseline, it has to be, of course, the outermost point of the archipelago and also considered as an island. Can I ask the Honourable Prime Minister whether the survey team has been able to ascertain this very important point for us to be able to finally, because it was a long-time fear, to use this for our claim going forward from now onwards?
Well, if you had listened to my answer carefully, you would have understood that the case is still at the pleading stage. It is not yet even fixed for merit to hear the submission of counsels from both sides. So how, I'm sure you will appreciate that I will not be able to publicly provide information with regard to a submission that we will make in the future before the tribunal. So the report is, of course, there are a number of data that have been collected, at the end of which a report will be drawn, and obviously our counsels will be able to make the relevant submission and use all the surveys that have been conducted in support of our case. So it would be improper and it would not be also intelligent on our side to already provide those. They are very sensitive information.
Because of time constraint, I will allow one last question from Honorable Richard Duval.
Mr. Speaker, sir, can the Honorable Prime Minister inform the House the approximate date when scientific survey report will be available and will be made public?
Well,
approximate.
Well, the Honourable Member will also appreciate that that report will depend on our surveyors and on the data that have been collected that are still, I don't want to say more because, again, I don't want to cause any prejudice to our case. But of course, that report will be ready before we submit there is a submission to be made on I think on the 14th of April, and that report most probably will be ready for them then for Maldives to consider and to make a rejoinder.
Time over. But before time over, the table has been advised that PQ B6, B7 have been withdrawn. And I suspend the sitting for 1 hour exceptionally.